Okay, hello everyone. Hello Magnus, and welcome to this week's LinkedIn Live, also available on YouTube as well from the Hello Monday Club. I've got the pleasure this week, actually I should start by saying Angelique isn't with me next week, in case you're thinking Angelique has made some miraculous transformation. That's not the case. Angelique has left me with the honour of talking to Magnus Wood this week, as many of you have seen when you saw the invite, who is an expert in workplace kindness. And I'm really looking forward to this. As some of you know, if you've dealt with me before or listened to some of the other broadcasts, I'm particularly interested in wisdom, which feels like there's a kind of shared interest here, and something that's quite nebulous, and that I believe is very important in the workplace. So, Magnus, for those people who are regular viewers and know me quite well, would you mind just doing a quick introduction of yourself to get us started?
Of course, and Trevor, I'm delighted that we both got the same memo about wearing black tops. You know, it's
brands now. We've decided.
So, hello everyone. I'm Magnus Wood, and I am a co-founder of the Kindness Corporation, an expert in workplace kindness, which we'll be talking about. It's interesting you talked about wisdom. I'm doing a session quite soon on wisdom and kindness, and there's a quote about that, nice, which I'll try and find as we chat. So basically, okay, I set up the Kindness Corporation along with my co-founder Cole Baker Bagwell. We had been working separately, doing the same sort of work in corporations and all kinds of business, making them kinder. We came together in November of last year, and we are, well, I'll tell you all about it. We're making the workplace kinder for everybody, a better place for everybody.
Fantastic. And it's lovely to have you on. So if anyone else is watching live and is able to type on their keyboard because they're not currently writing an email, please do say hi and let us know where you're from. This also goes out, and it's just so you know, it goes out to people that aren't necessarily seeing it live, so people can download it afterwards. And so we may get people asking us questions or making inquiries afterwards, and we encourage you to reach out to Magnus or myself afterwards if there's any of this content that you want to discuss. So, Magnus, I almost feel slightly guilty asking this question, right? And I think when we were messaging before, I posed it one of two ways, but I think this is often the starting point for most people. I don't think anyone is going to say that they don't want kindness in the world. If you said, can the world be a kinder place? I think virtually everyone, apart from a very few strange individuals, will put up their hand and go, yes, I would like the world to be a kinder place. But we have this view that when it comes to organizations, we need to be a little bit more hard-nosed about it. And I'm genuinely split between two things. One is understanding, and I do think some listeners want to hear this, like when you do an elevator pitch for the business case for kindness, what is that? And then the other bit that I'm kind of interested in is, to what extent do you indulge that, and to what extent do you kind of stand steadfast and go, you don't need a case, obviously you need to be kind. So, talk to me a little bit about that. I'm really intrigued in what your inroads are with organizations.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to start with our definition of kindness, which is unlike, in fact, it's completely unique. I'd never heard it before, because most people, when they think about kindness, they think about being nice, like buying somebody a coffee randomly, all of that stuff that's out there that you see at kind of random acts of kindness a week and all the rest of it. You see posts on places like Forbes, good quality publications, and they go, be kind to your colleagues, buy them a coffee, tell them you think they're great, and all that stuff. The thing is, that goes on anyway. That's not actually being kind. That's how people normally are in the normal run of things. So if you reframe kindness, and particularly in the workplace, and if you use this definition, suddenly it all becomes very binary as to whether something's kind or not. So we define at the Kindness Corporation, we define kindness as a commitment in thought, word, and action. So that's a commitment in thought, word, and action to leave everyone and everything better. So to leave everyone and everything better. So practically, if you think about it, we're on screens here, sometimes you're on a Zoom or Teams call and you see people that are, typing away on the phone, they kind of disappear off to make a cup of tea or something like that. That's not being kind in a meeting. But if you, as an organization, to carry on with meetings, if you say, right, there will be a clear agenda up front. The meeting will last no longer than half an hour if needs be. Only people who have a clear role within the meeting are going to be invited. And we will expect the person who's leading that meeting to make sure that everyone has made a contribution, and that we leave that meeting with a clear sense of where we're going, clear actions and timelines. That's a kind meeting. That's how I sell, as it were, kindness within the workplace, because I basically get people to reframe what they're doing. That's a kind meeting because it makes everyone and everyone better. Same for all sorts of different ways. So kindness is a very powerful lens to look through how we are ourselves, how we are with each other within the organization. And all of the data that I found before really starting the Kindness Corporation, because I did the biggest meta-analysis of all the data out there, and subsequently the Kindness Corporation has the largest data set on workplace kindness in the world, that we've generated. Everything we know in terms of innovation, creativity, productivity, teamwork, performance, well-being, you name it, all the stuff you want to go up goes up when organizations deliberately focus on kindness. Now, the one thing I can't do yet, and I was talking to finance director last night about this, is I cannot go into an organization and tell you the ROI kindness is this, because every organization is different, and because we're doing it, but nobody's ever done any long-term studies of performance over time when organizations have focused on being kind. We'll have this conversation in 2 years' time, and I'll have some really lovely metrics to share with you. At the moment, I can share metrics that basically show that people thrive more in kind organizations, and as a consequence, the organizations thrive more. And if you take one last thing, attrition, the Great Resignation, the fact that people can't hire any talent anymore. If organizations are kind, people stay, and therefore you don't have all the costs of having to replace somebody and all the impacts that they're on there. So in about 5 minutes, that's how I sell kindness in terms of someone who's a bit sort of cynical. Aren't we all kind?
Yeah, it was good. And I think that's really good, the differentiation between doing some kind stuff, like kind gestures, versus having kindness almost as a cultural component. I think that difference is so important, because I think that's where you're likely to lose people. If they see it as just being like going around doing nice stuff, then all of a sudden it feels like, well, people are kind of wasting time, assuming they're being really hard-nosed about it. People are wasting time doing these additional things. And I think that's true for a lot of workplace activity. When you try and introduce it, I can see like leaders' minds ticking over, and they kind of go, oh, so this is a thing they're going to be doing on top of. But what you're sort of saying is, actually, you can do probably most of the things that you do at the moment. There's maybe some things that get excluded because they are fundamentally unkind, but you can do most of the things you're doing at the moment in a kind way. Yeah. And that's really where the energy and effort should go. Is that fair?
Absolutely. I think that's the way to look at it. And the way we work with organizations is basically we show a mirror to how they are, sort of what their culture is and how they are behaving through essentially employee questions. But we ask us a unique set of questions that nobody else asked, and what that shows is a mirror of, so these are the areas where you didn't know that there is unkindness. Now that unkindness could be expressed as lack of trust. It could be expressed in all sorts of ways. We define it as unkind because the end result is that people aren't being kind to each other. So consequently, then it becomes sort of easier to sort these things, because we're focused. If you take trust, for example, if you're working in a low trust environment, well, that's unkind, and therefore there are things that you could do about it, basically.
Right. Okay. So if I was being really cynical, kindness is a kind of one part of a Venn diagram that overlaps with some other stuff. You could pick one of those others and get some of the benefits. But what you're saying is kindness kind of hits more of these points than anything else. It's just a really simple lens that most people understand. You can lay it on top and go, if you improve this thing, you'll hit all these other amazing metrics like innovation and staff turnover and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't suggest it's a silver bullet, as it were, but yeah, it's not something that that organizations have thought about. And if you go to things like empathy, compassion, or whatever, that's all quite nice, and having good emotional intelligence, all these things are good. If you go did this leave everyone and everything better? That's a really simple binary. You come back to it. Oh no, that meeting didn't. Or no, the way we approached people didn't. Oh, the way that we just did our town hall didn't leave everyone better. Well, you're being unkind, so you need to do something about it. So by presenting a fresh lens, we're basically getting people to kind of look at their behaviour and their policies and their actions and their cultures essentially anew in many ways, actually.
Yeah, do you know what? I'm very excited about this topic. I've got so many things pinging off in my head. I'm thinking about legacy as well, because you're talking about like a meeting, but I'm thinking about, well, you can be kind to a building then. And I know that one of the things that you guys talk about is the planet as well. So there's ways of being kind to people, but also things. I want to say hello to a few people who've said hi. So hi, Angelique. So she's watching. She's basically stalking us, making sure we don't screw this up. That's what's going on there. I've got quite a lot joining in, Ines, and anonymous LinkedIn users, one of whom has asked a question. So I wonder if we put it on screen and just kind of walk through a little bit. So I'll read it because some people like to listen to this rather than watch it. Will consistent kindness of high stand depend on mental wellness of the employees, the motivation levels and commitment to the employer? So talking a little bit about what you were saying, the overlap maybe a little bit with employee engagement and the fact that kindness can help to drive it. What are your thoughts?
That's a brilliant question, and I love it, and there's a lot in there. So let me start by why do we do what we do? So Cole and I started the Kindness Corporation because basically we spend 92,000 hours at work. So about 10 years of our life, physically at work, in the office, on Zoom or whatever it is. You look at surveys that have gone in the past, Gallup, you name it, our own surveys that we've now done, and people are, if they're not miserable, they're unsatisfied, their mental health is poor. There are and particularly with the pandemic that's just gone through, hybrid working, all of all of these things, we're living through a crisis when it comes to the way that we work, and it's causing mental and physical problems for people in a way that it never has. The problem that we see is lots of organizations haven't adapted to the new ways of working, are still using kind of old paradigms to kind of look at how we work, and they just haven't got their head around the fact that work and life is completely different now. So yes, the answer is that how kind you are depends on how you feel about the job that you do. Now, the reason we started doing it, part of my journey, was I worked for a very famous, and not the most famous, but a famous and very poorly performing e-commerce company. I ran a business for them. People were miserable. I was doing my best to run my division the best I could and create a place where people were happy. Yet they were miserable. They were not bringing the best of themselves to work. So that kind of lit a fire under me in order to create an environment where people thrive and do their best ever work. So yes, the answer is consistent kindness. You're not going to, put it this way, it's hard to be consistently kind if you are miserable at work. What I do say is you can go in and be kind, on teams, physically together. You can be kind to your colleagues. You can be kind to yourself by taking breaks. You can practice kindness, which will make you feel better because all the happy hormones, serotonin, dopamine, and all the rest of it releases. So there are things that you can do in kindness that will improve how you feel and how your colleagues feel. And that's not a bad first step in terms of actually addressing, where you are at the moment, and the lack of kindness is actually to show some kindness to yourself and to others.
Yeah, fantastic. And, I'm glad that kind of question sparked a few things. It makes me think when you're talking about the fact that you can sort of lead with kindness. So kindness can give you some of those benefits and help you feel better anyway. It makes me think about a study that was a long time ago by Dan Ariely, who does a lot of this kind of behavioral economic stuff. And he did an experiment in an organization where he directly rewarded some people, and then other people, he gave them a reward to give to others. And the people who were directly rewarded got like a momentary boost in motivation, as you can expect, which is what the typical employee recognition schemes often look like. You get something for doing a good job. But the people who were given something to give to others, they benefited as much, if not more, than having got the reward directly themselves. The other person benefited, and for both of them, the feeling of well-being, the motivation components of that, lasted a lot longer. I guess probably, I mean, I know you might say that's an individual act, but probably because the sense of it being part of the environment and where they work, it being more of a feature rather than an individual act, because it was built in. I don't know, but it sparked that thought in my head that actually it's nice to be kind, and it's nice to have kindness bestowed upon you. And this again where I get a bit stuck with, like, why do you have to make a case for this at all? Everyone should be thinking about this more.
Part of the issue, and I think you sort of touched on it in the beginning, in the kind of world of business particularly, is that there is an old outdated paradigm, which is that business is dog eat dog, it's competitive, it's a scramble, it's all these words, war, and all these other words that they fitted a time post Second World War. Basically, they fitted that time, and that was kind of right for an industrialized society in the way that we work. In the way that we work now, which is networked, it's based on social relationships. We all have a greater sense of our own consciousness, our connection with each other and the planet. There is a greater belief in abundancy rather than scarcity. The kindness is more relevant than ever, but we've still got playing out this model because of sort of basically the people who are at the top of organizations are retiring, and then the people that they trained are kind of like mid-level or whatever. That's how we were taught to work. Just not true. It hasn't been true for countless years. And ask anyone in their 20s about how they want to work, and you can look at the evidence in their mobility in terms of how they work, and they're living demonstration that is an outmoded model.
Yeah. I mean, we Angelique and I, the kind way to put it is that we bang on about this every week. The fact that we've inherited all these different mental models and all these mindsets that are hugely outdated for exactly the reasons that you've said, that the controllers sat at the top of the organization. That's typically someone who's more traditional, and their view of the world hasn't really moved on, and they were trained by people, and we do kind of emulate those people who appear to be successful. I often talk about the fact that success is a really bad metric by which to judge who your mentor should be, because they often have no idea why they were successful, and the reasons for their success aren't relevant to you anyway, assuming there's a bit of a generational gap in there. I've put the question up just to see if anyone would like to answer that. How much value does your organisation put on kindness? Now, they may not, I suspect most organisations aren't explicit about this. And I can think back to everywhere that I've worked, and I could probably, I'm not suggesting it's your scale, but put them on a scale of like the workplaces that were just kinder and the workplace that weren't. Probably think back a lot to my orientation in the organisation, how I was on board and things like that. People showed kindness to newcomers and patience and things like that. I think would probably be the ones that I would rank as higher. So we'll see if anyone comes in, because there's always a bit of a delay. But let's talk about measurement then for a little bit. You talked about the fact that you've created a unique scale. You ask questions that no one else asks. I'm wondering if maybe some of those items that you use at the moment might give us a little bit more insight into what the construct of kindness is and why it has this effect on organisations.
It's interesting. I mean, kindness is multi. If we have this definition of kindness being quite binary, kindness is essentially about creating workplaces which are human and which we are allowed to be ourselves, and where we can thrive and essentially do our best work and feel that we're working on with purpose. Now, the problem with engagement and other sort of ongoing platforms that ask people, how are you feeling today? So, all that sort of stuff, is that engagement is, I'm sure you bang on about this, is top down. Are they engaged with us? It's the kind of, it shows contract is. It's, we are the employer. Are our employees engaged with us? Well, it doesn't really work. Some days you're more engaged than others. You're more engaged on some projects than you are with others. You're more engaged with some teams than you are with others. Engagement is a very primitive measure, basically. So we ask a set of questions, and they include things like, do the leaders of your organization live and model the values of that organization? So, stuff like that, which are wide ranging and in some senses quite brave for an organization to ask of their employees.
Yeah.
They're only there are only 20 questions. What we have found is that they very clearly show, and other questions like we ask, do you want to work in a kind organization? And I can tell you that 88% of people in the UK and the US would like to work in a kind organization, yet only 66% of people say they actually do. So that ask the CEOs as done, and 100% of them say they would like to be running a kind corporation or organization. So the data points to the places where in many senses you kind of get the biggest bang for your buck in terms of what you can do to create a kind of organization. It also points to the places where people feel they are being let down by their organization, often by the leaders, often by the not having a sense of purpose, often by sort of being asked to do too much, overwhelmed. We ask people about how they feel at the start and the end of the day. Those kinds of questions give us a really clear sort of broad view of the organization. That they bring out problems, but then we aggregate the sort of the questions together, and we have something called K certification, which we are in the process of launching. We have some organizations who are going through that at the moment, and that's basically them having met a standard. There's a magic score of above 7. If you get above that, and you're basically running a kind organization, and we will certify you as kind. But we also do other things like, in terms of metrics, we have a kindness promoter score, which is, as you might imagine, how likely are you to say to your friends, family and colleagues that where you work is kind? And we've had scores of -40, and we've had scores of sort of 33. We've had that sort of range. It's we've been in some unkind places, and we've been in some quite kind places as well. So that's the thing. The numbers don't lie. And I was asked the question last night. Do you surprise people? And I went, yeah, sometimes we do. Often people know what the problems are, but they just don't want to admit them, or kind of they're not seeing them as clearly as they could do through existing engagement surveys or whatever. And oftentimes it's a complete shock that what we're telling them that some of the problems are, which is great, because then we can do something about them.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. It sounds like you're a bit braver with the questions that you ask, and I think you're right. The problem with engagement surveys, and I would advocate that an organisation asks them over not asking them. If that's the choice, it's better to find out what's going on. But yeah, the problem is often that it's designed implicitly. I think there's loads of bias because of who pays the check. These things are designed to kind of tell a good story, or at least a very actionable story to the senior execs in an organisation. So it's designed to kind of have enough that there will at least hopefully be some metric in there they can be proud about, and it's kind of designed to inform them. And then we have this weird disconnect then, because we expect local action to take place off of a survey that was almost certainly designed not for that audience and not necessarily practical. What I'm hearing from you is that although there is a little bit in there that kind of speaks upwards in quite a brave way, actually creating more kindness in your team, it seems incredibly actionable. I'm amazed, by the way, that only 88% of people want to work in a kind organisation. I mean, what are the other 12% thinking? There's obviously some imaginary trade-off. Like, if I say yes, sorry, Magnus?
I said
they're like, what? I mean, how strange. Like, no, I don't want to work in a kind organisation. Just bizarre to me. So I have actually got a question. So let's have a little look at the question that's popped in. How do we handle kindness element while handling non-performers in the organisation? How to draw a line, especially in team meetings? I mean, I have an answer to this, but I'm not here to answer it. So can you talk to us a little bit about, let's just make it about tough messages. How do you do tough messages if your goal is to maintain kindness within your team?
So I'm gonna start with a quote from Brené Brown, which is always good to quote her, but I'm gonna kind of build on it. She was talking about compassion. So compassion is kindness to suffering. Kindness is broader than compassion because kindness can apply to everything. And she says that compassionate people, so read kindness, kind people have boundaries of steel. Kind people have boundaries of steel, which is a really interesting way of looking at kindness, because basically if you're being kind to yourself, you're not going to take that extra project on. You're going to you make it very clear what you're prepared to do and what you expect of others. So this is when it comes down to non-performers. The kindest thing, and I've done this many times, the kindest thing is to let people go at times. They might not see this at that time as the kindest thing. And I'm not going to come up with a BS to say, oh, it's going to be the best thing for them. You know what? It might not be the best thing for them. No. It's the best thing for the organization. And as a leader in the organization, if somebody is not performing and you have given them ample opportunity to do so, then you need to cut them out of the organization. It's, this is when kindness is not about being soft and nice and all the rest of it. This is about having boundaries of steel and making it very clear what you expect and giving people ample opportunities to rise to that and exceed that. But if they don't, then they should be out. And it's also about clarity of that, so standing for that. So this is why kindness is so linked with senior management, and why the behavior that senior management practice on a regular basis, model and encourage, is so important. So if someone is non-performing, in the context of meeting, don't embarrass them in a meeting, but make it very clear that the expectations. So if they turned up with a piece of work that isn't that great and everybody knows it, call it out. That's obviously you maybe have some sensitivity if this is the first time they've done it. There could be issues, but if this is a consistent pattern, call it out and say these are not the standards you expect. So kindness isn't about softness. It's about being very clear what you stand for, what you're about, and what your standards are individually and as an organization.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I have also a quote from another guru. I think it's Margaret Heffernan said it originally, which is clear is kind and unclear is unkind. Yeah. So I think this question comes from that blurring of boundaries between kindness and niceness. So, if someone is struggling with something, then I can be nice and go, it's okay, or I can be nice and never give them feedback. But ultimately, that version of niceness is actually quite unkind. I'm withholding information from someone that would potentially help their performance. And I also go back to your original definition, which is you need to leave things better. Well, leaving that person in post is not helping the team. It's probably not helping that person. I mean, whether they're talking about it or not, they probably have a sense that they're drowning or underperforming. And it's certainly not helping the organization. So, whilst it may not necessarily result in them leaving, you need to put that challenge in place to make sure that they are then buying into a version of the team, the organization, whatever, where it's better eventually. And I think if you're not really clear on that, they can't do it. They can't commit to the thing that's going to improve things if they don't know what that thing is. And that's kind of tough. It's almost tough love, isn't it? But it's just the sense of, if you're being wishy-washy and never telling someone something, that's actually really mean, and you're doing it to manage your own comfort. You're not doing it out of kindness. It's like, anyway, I could go off on one, I think, about that. So we are amazingly coming to the end. So I'm, and Angelique's just posted, hard on the issue, soft on the person. Yes, love that. Occasionally hard on the person, but that's a really good starting point, hard on the issue, soft on the person. So, I have a couple of things. I guess we've got our sort of flow over where we can be a little bit more indulgent in some other things. But in order to help those people who have got these boundaries of steel and are going to finish in 30 seconds time, I'm wondering consistently, when you look at organizations, I know you said every organization is different, but is there sort of one thing, whether it's at the team level or the organization level, that seems to be more of a linchpin than anything else to actually get them to increase their kindness scores and get them more towards that 7 that you're looking for? Is there a consistent thing, like if there was going to be a rule that they need to follow, what would that be?
Yeah, it's really simple. It's the CEO and the leadership team, however broad that is, having a consistent definition of kindness, which is kindness leaves everyone and everything better, and then consistently modeling that kindness and encouraging that kind behavior on a daily basis throughout the organization. That, I can promise you, will create a kinder organization faster than anything else that you know, because I've seen it happen countless times.
Fantastic. Yeah, and unfortunately, it often comes down to that, particularly in traditional organisations, right, where the role modelling comes from the top and definitions flow downwards. I can see that happening. Okay, so now my overflow questions, where I can indulge my own curiosity a little bit more. Never mind the viewers and listeners. Let's just go with what I want. So I'm intrigued because obviously my interest is very much in organisational wisdom and the value that wisdom can bring to organisations. And in my definition, which is not nearly as concise as yours, or at least in my description of how it grows, two things that you need to be in place to help it grow is courage and love. And pretty much when you're talking about a lot of the actions that come out of kindness, I think there's a lot of overlap with what I call love. But you said right back at the top of this session that you were due to do a talk and you had a quote about kindness and wisdom, and I'm hoping that you've managed to dredge that up.
Yeah, I've got it right in front of me. So basically,
Go for it.
Kindness is more important than wisdom, and the recognition of this is the beginning of wisdom. So kindness is more important than wisdom, and the recognition of this is the beginning of wisdom. And that was Theodore Isaac Rubin. I can put that in the chat.
So amazingly, right, bear in mind, I collect wisdom quotes. I'm in the process of building a journal every single day, and that isn't one I've come across. And I've set that challenge to so many people in meetings. They've come up with a wisdom quote, and I've gone, no, got it, yep, tick, yeah, done that one, yeah. I've got like, 200 or so brand new wisdom quote I haven't heard before, and I love it. And actually very consistent with what I say, which is that, and this gets a bit conceptual, but what the hell, we've probably lost loads of viewers anyway, that until you start to extend yourself and your sense of self and your area of concern beyond yourself, you can't grow any wisdom that is of any value. And I guess that's someone else saying it far more succinctly than that until you expand your boundaries of what's important and what you care about and what you want to action, what you want to influence beyond yourself, there just isn't enough information for you to grow wisdom. And a simple way that I think about this is that a big component of wisdom, when you actually talk to people about it, you get them to define it, you look at the layperson's definition of wisdom, it always has a human element to it. So people who don't have that, people who are very, very smart and even kind of experienced smart, which is really what wisdom is, but purely from the task, purely from data, purely from an intellectual or academic perspective, they're not called wise. They're only called wise when they get how people tick as well. They can have all that stuff and it's actually really useful. Systems thinkers are fantastically brilliant people, and often they are called wise, but only when their definition of system includes people. And it's very hard to grow that unless you start expressing love, which is really, kindness, which is what you're talking about.
And this is why a lot of the work we do with individuals at all levels is about mindfulness, because awareness is the root of kindness. That's awareness of self. It's awareness of how you are showing up, how you're impacting others, how others are impacting you. But it's also systemic awareness of the organization or the structures you're in. It comes from awareness, which is, you could say empathy, but actually it is about being present in that moment and being aware and seeing how things truly how they are. And so that's so connected with wisdom, because wisdom is about the taking insights and knowledge and all the rest of it and connecting it with human life and making it seem real and relevant to people. So a lot of the work we do with people is about mindfulness, because you come across a lot of leaders and people actually at all levels who are being unkind, not because they're setting out to be unkind, but they're being unkind because they're not really attending to how they are being and what is happening in that moment and how things are. And so mindfulness is so important. In fact, it's so important that we're just about in mid-September. We're launching a 46-week-long, sort of experience, kind of and community, which is all called the Work Kind Community, where we are going to make sure that we can work with people on an ongoing basis to support them in their journey at work and give them the kind of tools and insights they need on a regular basis.
Amazing. And I think those kind of projects, and I guess it's similar for what we do at the Hello Monday Club, where we bring people together into leadership groups and we try and kind of be there in the moment, is a trend that distinguishes things that are sort of slightly more passive thought leadery stuff.
Yeah.
We could talk about kindness, you could wax lyrical about it forever, but actually guiding people and supporting people on a journey is what makes the difference. And you can kind of see that slight kickback against kind of management, leadership gurus, business gurus, that kind of stuff, because they'll put something out there and then they won't necessarily back it up with action or support networks and things like that. Whereas actually making the change is all important in my book, and I think that kind of that sort of community network is one of the things that could really make a difference.
And I think that's why, what you do with the Hello Monday Club is so important, because it's, we can all go to a webinar, but, we've all been on webinars and see how engaged people are, and kind of like, there's that webinar that we've done to. And that's the power, I think, of what you've got, which is, it's a network of peers who are growing with each other and enriching each other. And I think that's incredibly powerful. And I think, we've all got limited time, but sort of, networks like yours and support organizations and communities, whatever you want to call it, like Hello Monday, it's so powerful. I think it's well worth spending time with.
Yeah, anyone who's brave enough to kind of want to take some steps into the unknown, which is really what the future of work is, we kind of make it a little bit more tangible, and then we get people to support one another. Now I think about it, it's a very kind approach, right? By your own definition. Not I'm cheesily shoehorning that in, but that that's the idea, is that we kind of leave everyone who comes in a better place. Magnus, it has been an absolute pleasure. I am now, I think, no disrespect to Angelique, but for the first time, absolutely gutted that our conversation needs to come to an end. But I'm conscious that it's 10 minutes over for a lot of people, 10 minutes over for you. But it's been a genuine pleasure. It's been super interesting, and I will obviously share more of your details through our network. And I look forward to connecting with you at some point in the future as well.
It's been a real pleasure, Trevor. Thank you very much, and thank you everyone for.
Thank you very much. And of course, join us next week. We're going to have our LinkedIn Live, as we do every Thursday at this time. So, and continue to comment if you're not watching this live, because we will still view your comments on YouTube and on LinkedIn, and we like to follow up. And we look forward to seeing all the viewers again soon. So, take care, and thanks everyone.